It wasn't that long ago when workplace health and safety meant identifying trip hazards, managing electrical risks, wearing hard hats and steel cap boots, guarding machinery, or ensuring office workstations were ergonomically designed. But in 2023, Safe Work Australia fundamentally changed the way we think about safety in the workplace. Today, employers have a legal obligation not only to protect the physical safety of their people, but also to identify and manage psychosocial hazards that have the potential to cause psychological harm. For many business owners, this represents one of the most significant changes to workplace health and safety in decades. The legislation is here. It's not a passing trend, and it's something every employer needs to understand. In this episode, I'm joined by Leanne Drew-McKain, CEO of the National Psychosocial Safety Network, to explore not only what the law now requires, but why these changes matter. We discuss the neuroscience behind human behavior and our deeply wired need to belong. We explore how workplaces where people feel psychologically safe, valued, and respected consistently outperform those driven by fear, uncertainty, and conflict, not only through improved well-being, but through higher productivity, stronger customer experiences, greater innovation, and lower staff turnover. We also unpack practical strategies for creating compliant workplaces, the risks facing organizations that fail to adapt, and why the most successful businesses of the future won't view psychosocial safety as another compliance exercise, but as a competitive advantage. Whether you lead a team of 5 or 500, this conversation will challenge the way you think about leadership, workplace culture, and what it really takes to build a high-performing organization. I hope you enjoy this episode. Here's my conversation with Leanne Drew-McKain.
We're all in pursuit of a life that's true, building something bigger than me or you. If you're ready to grow, then this path's for you. Welcome to Allies on Pursuit.
This episode is brought to you by New Horizon Financial. Whether you're growing a business, buying a home, investing in property, or upgrading equipment, New Horizon Financial provides tailored lending solutions to help business owners, investors, and professionals achieve their financial goals with confidence. Contact your local NHF credit advisor today on 1-300-133-597 or visit www.nhfaus.com.au. And now, on to the show. Leanne Drew-McKain, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Oh, Chad, thank you for having me. Any opportunity to chat to Chad?
Well, why don't we get started by just give us a little bit of insight, tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and sort of bring us into the fold.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Love to talk about the journey and my passion for this work. So I am someone who believes that every single worker in Australia deserves to turn up to a workplace where they experience acceptance and belonging.
Okay.
And support.
Yeah.
And I believe that because essentially that's how our very social brain is hardwired to be. We thrive in a state of acceptance and belonging to our social pack. Yeah. And there is nothing you can do to hurt a human being more than expose them to rejection and exclusion from their social pack. So a long time ago, I don't like to number my my days anymore, but let's just say 15 to 20 years ago, I guess I had an epiphany one day.
Yeah.
I was like I'd put a pair of glasses on the first time when I walked into a room in the workplace in the job I had back in the day, and I noticed that when the communication was breaking down, when things were getting tense, when things started locking up around a meeting table, it wasn't the subject matter that was slowing things. It was breaking it down.
Yeah.
It wasn't the issue.
Yeah.
It wasn't, the nature of the conversation or the methods of the conversation that were derailing us. It was the manner in which people were interacting with each other and speaking to each other. The moment you get that person that, sat back in the chair and crossed their arms and ignored that person that made the comment just then, or interrupted them and spoke over the top of them, or made a sarcastic reply when they made a suggestion. All of a sudden, you'd feel the tension in the room and you'd see that person shrink back and stop contributing.
Yes.
And I thought, wow, how do I get access to this? So I was then doing some consulting roles and advisory roles in government, and I realised that we don't have a language to talk about how we talk to each other.
Yes.
At work.
Yes.
And so without that language, we couldn't access these patterns that were occurring. We couldn't get into these problems. We didn't have a way to educate and support a workforce to treat each other with courtesy, with mutual respect, with kindness.
Yes.
And without that, everything just kept breaking down. Communication is the glue that binds or breaks us as human beings, essentially. So that's a very rambly, long answer to me and where I've started the work. But over the last 2 decades, that early inspiration and that early idea and identification of this need drove me, took me on an incredible adventure. So I started developing workshop programs and coaching programs to help teams and workplaces talk about how they talk to each other.
Yes.
And build what I would call, a safe and respectful communication culture at work. To give everybody the opportunity to participate in that not just coaching, but developing a shared language, shared norms and shared understandings for our communication behaviour at work.
Yes.
I then started developing programs, interactive online programs that roll out across workforces that give every worker access to that opportunity, recognising that we all have agency and we all have an accountability for how we treat each other at work. So I developed some programs called Class Act Conduct that have been very successful in the market, and then sold some of those programs, and now have embarked on my new adventure to launch the National Psychosocial Safety Network. In response to the legislation that Australia has established in the last 3.5 years around establishing codes to prevent psychosocial hazards at work. That has opened up all kinds of challenges for employers and employees. So organisations are needing a lot of support to implement that legislation well. So we're very passionate about helping organisations do that. And we have developed a best practice standard for risk prevention that organisations can implement in their organisation, and we'll be shortly launching a certification program that leaders can immerse and their organisations and their workforce in to achieve that standard of risk prevention in a way that's measurable and defensible and provable. So that's been a big journey over the past 20 years, but that's crazy me.
Well, man, there's so much in this. There's so much in this. And the first thing that comes to mind is I met you well before these workplace health and safety.
Yes.
These changes came to legislation.
Yes.
Well before. You were already an important voice in the space of psychosocial safety. Even from my own knowledge, even the way that you had helped me on my journey, it wasn't just a matter of transforming the way that I viewed communication in the workplace, but actually how the concepts that I learned through your insight and your wisdom had impacted on my interpersonal relationships. And if there's one thing I can attest to, even if I don't get it right all the time, and I just don't, I'm a human being, I'm an emotional creature. I have all of the flaws of every typical human, but I know when I'm getting it wrong.
Yeah.
That was one of the first things I noticed with you, is that I can sense better where I'm going off the rails when it comes to relating to other people, both in business and when it comes to personal relationships.
Yeah, amazing.
And again, I think that you have, hit on so many concepts that the viewers of this podcast or the listeners of this podcast will learn from. I couldn't wait to get you on. I think from an employer's perspective, which I think we should talk about first, when we talk about the changes that have come through, even in conversations I had recently with a local MP, a lot of people are still grasping to actually catch up to the changes, to understand what their responsibilities are. It's to understand the balance between, getting it right and overcorrecting. If you could maybe sort of give a little bit of feedback to start us off from an employer's perspective, from a small business owner's perspective, how does the legislation affect them? And what are some sort of key insights you could provide to them?
Oh, thanks, Chad. Well, that's a big question, but it's a hugely important one. And I really, have I guess a heavy heart for some of the challenges that both workers and employers are having in implementing the legislation. The intention of the legislation is amazing.
Yep.
And it's so important for this country.
Agreed.
But of course, implementing policy it's not new. It's challenging space. And what we're seeing is we're now seeing some really clear patterns. So over the past, it was November 2022 when Safe Work Australia released the Model Code of Practice that the states and territories then started to implement and establish over the past 3 years. So we're now seeing some pretty clear patterns, and we're seeing a lot of wonderful employers really go to town and put the effort in and do the work, consult, listen to their workers, and do their best to turn to the requirements of the legislation.
Yeah.
But we are also hearing strongly around about some patterns of, if you like, employee misuse or overuse of the legislation.
Yeah.
We're hearing about we're hearing a lot of stories from HR leaders as well in organisations that are finding that some of their employees that have long been, if you like, the performance challenges in the business are the first ones to come forward and make a complaint with HR about a psychosocial injury.
Yes.
And then escalate that time frame from initial complaint or raising a concern to lodging a claim.
Yeah.
And they're missing that other important C word, communication. And so, we're seeing this overuse, and yet I think a lot of employers are equally concerned that there's an underreporting, so that the quieter voices in the business that perhaps are struggling and do have a concern aren't coming forward.
Yeah.
And I can give you an example. I mean, even just in the last few months, one of the, risk consultations, psychosocial risk consultations I conducted for an organisation, the original complaint was around an employee who felt unsafe reporting to their new manager.
Okay.
When we dug in, we invited a whole range of workers to come and participate at interview to really understand what was going on and understand some of the communication behaviour patterns that were occurring. And so what we found is actually, to cut a long story short, that it was that original complainant who, in fact, was one of the perpetrators, the 3 perpetrators of endemic workplace bullying that was affecting around 20 other employees at work. Yeah. But had we not gone in and done that work and invited the other voices to step in, the organisation never would have heard from them and never would have understood where those risks really were in their business and for their people.
Yeah. Now, if you wouldn't mind, just for the layman out there, would you mind just giving a brief explanation of psychosocial safety? What does it mean? How does it impact people in the workplace?
Sure, Chad. So there are two terms that you will hear bandied around in this space.
Yep.
And they're often used interchangeably. You'll hear the term psychological safety and you'll hear the term psychosocial safety.
Okay.
So when we refer to psychological safety, we are referring to an employer's responsibility to create conditions at work in which every worker feels safe to speak up and participate at work, to make suggestions, to raise a concern, to ask a question, knowing that, bring an idea, knowing that they will be treated with respect, consideration, openness, interest, courtesy, and that they will not be subjected to behaviours of exclusion or rejection or dismissal.
Yep.
Psychosocial safety in this country in particular has the definitions of psychosocial safety have really broadened out, actually.
Yep.
Psychosocial safety regards a much broader church of factors relevant to being psychologically well at work.
Yep.
So there are three types of hazards or three types of factors that most definitions regard in the Code of Practice for Managing Psychosocial Hazards at Work.
Okay.
They include organisational factors, experiential or environmental factors, and then the social/relational factors. So the organisational factors include aspects such as workload, role clarity, job equity, organisational change management, for example.
Yeah.
The environmental or experiential factors include aspects of work such as remote work, shift work, isolated work, exposure to a traumatic event, inappropriate surveillance at work. And then the third set of factors are the social and relational factors such as workplace bullying, harassment, team conflict, and interpersonal stress.
Okay, that makes sense.
So where I believe we are getting it wrong in this country is we are leaving organisations and employers with the challenge of implementing psychosocial hazards management, of implementing psychosocial safety without undergirding them and their workers with psychological safety first.
Okay.
So to give you an example of how that's playing out in ways that are really actually risk-inducing is we are hearing quite a lot of stories from employers who have actually done the right thing as per legislation and implemented a psychosocial risk survey to consult workers on their experience of psychosocial safety at work.
Okay.
And in that process, for example, there's been focus groups set up and you'll have that one worker in that room, in that meeting, in that consultation, sitting there, arms crossed, scowl.
Yeah.
Why would we do that?
Yeah.
Abrupt tone of voice, interrupting,
Yes.
being sarcastic,
Yes.
sending signals to the others in the room that shrink their comfort and felt safety to participate themselves, to speak up, to make suggestions, to add their voice.
Yes.
That in itself escalates risks.
Yes.
We've also heard a number of stories of consultations through risk surveys that have been conducted where through the feedback process, managers or workers have been identified or identifiable through the feedback.
Yep.
And where that's caused, significant harm. In other words, as I said at the start of our conversation, communication, our interpersonal interactions, are the glue that bind or break us as human beings in any social environment, including the workplace. If we don't first, as employers, ensure that our workers are really clear on what safe, supportive, kind and respectful interactions look and feel like at work, forget trying to go in and have a conversation around workload or role clarity and get anywhere.
Okay.
Because you are more likely to increase risks and create problems and walk away with no more clarity or no better risk management solution in place. Wow. We need both. So in the National Psychosocial Safety Network, our underpinning principle is an approach that integrates psychosocial and psychological safety and stitches that psychological safety into the workplace for practice, moment by moment, every day.
Is there I think from an outsider's perspective, listening to this for the first time and maybe actually bringing this on board and conceptualizing it for the first time, are there any sort of limitations or minimum size requirements for an organization or any industries that might be exempt? Like, is there somebody who could say to themselves, well, we're a small business. I've only got 5 to 10 employees. I've only got 20 employees. I only have 3 employees. Is there anyone that could just say, you know what, it's not important. I don't have to think about this. Or is it something that everybody should be taking on board?
So, Chad, any person conducting a business or undertaking in Australia, any PCBU, has to implement the legislation in this country.
Can I skirt it by hiring contractors?
No, you cannot. Okay. No. And here's the thing.
Yep.
We don't want to skirt it.
No, of course. I'm just
because it's good for you, but it's good for your business.
Yep.
But what we do want to skirt is some of the challenges that employers are currently having implementing the legislation.
Okay.
Because there is a lot of hurt out there.
Yeah.
A lot of organisations, a lot of employers that are hurting and that are struggling to implement the legislation effectively without increasing these risks.
Okay.
And while the outcomes of implementing the legislation correctly and effectively are gold for performance and productivity,
yes,
the outcomes of mismanaging or not managing the implementation of this legislation effectively are hugely costly.
Yeah.
And so we are seeing, for example, quite a few trends. I'll give you an example of a case that came across my desk in the past week. One of my team was supporting a leader who came to him in a high state of distress after having a claim lodged against her. So this particular leader decided she wanted to make more effort with her team. And to spend more time and be more present with her staff.
Yeah.
So she took the trouble one day to walk the workplace floor and go and visit one of her warehouse teams.
Keep going.
And she stopped in, had a few chats, spoke with one of the newer employees, had a 2-minute conversation, and then moved on. A couple of days later, she gets a knock on the door from HR, and that worker has filed a complaint.
God. Okay.
Saying that she did not feel psychosocially safe in that interaction.
Yep.
Turns out what happened is she's gone to the manager. The manager has then said, oh, terribly sorry, didn't feel this way. Rather than really address that, has gone straight to HR to keep herself safe and take forward that complaint. HR, looking to feel safe themselves, then decide to lodge a complaint, launch an investigation, undertake a formal process in which that leader was banned from then even interacting with her staff.
Yeah, wow.
Taking that leader offline and embarking a formal process that is painful and harmful to absolutely everybody.
Thinking about like a devil's advocate perspective, okay, if somebody go, man, more things to worry about, more things to think about. How do I do this the easiest road? What's the path of least resistance? Like I said, some people might be thinking, well, maybe I just hire contractors. Maybe I just put on casual staff. Maybe we just don't talk about it. Because as soon as we highlight it, like you said, we might be exposing ourselves, like bringing education to the workplace where people are like, oh, I didn't know that this was important. I didn't know that I could make a claim for, unfair treatment or that I could maybe take time off of work due to, my physical safety and well-being because my employer is not working within these guidelines. I think sometimes when we bring light to employers, they might be thinking to themselves, oh God, maybe it's best to ignore it. What do you think the risks would be of just ignoring it for the average business owner?
The risks are significant, I'm sorry to say, and I do want to just take a moment to, let's put that elephant on the table and address the fact that we absolutely are. Certainly anecdotally, I am seeing reported every single week to us leaders and particularly HR leaders that are experiencing that the highest volume of psychosocial injury complaints are coming from workers in their business who they will have typified as the performance challenges in their business, and that some of their workers who actually may be experiencing some harm and have some genuine concerns who they would like to be hearing from are staying quiet. So that absolutely is a challenge that we have to put on the table. We've got to listen to business industry here and understand and turn to them and support them to implement effectively.
Okay.
So now I've forgotten your question.
Well, like I said, someone's first reaction will be fear.
Yes,
if
absolutely.
I bring this to the table, if I do focus on this, if I want to do the right thing, and we'll touch on this later, I'm sure. A safe, an environment where people feel safe, they feel valued, they feel respected, they feel they can collaborate is a more effective workspace. We know this.
Yes.
When people are feeling a sense of harm, and I know we can touch on this, or if they don't feel safe, they're not producing their best results. So even from a, what's in it for me perspective, I think a focus on this area is absolutely vital. And that comes from a lot of conversations with you. But just talking to those who are like, man, I don't have time. And actually I'm afraid to do this. Because if I do this, I might expose myself to risk that wouldn't be present if I just ignored it completely.
Yes.
So like I said, how do we speak to those people?
Yes, and I hear them and I absolutely understand that fear and reluctance completely. I would say to them, there aren't 17 steps you need to take. There's one.
Okay.
Start the conversation with your team, with all your workers, around how you talk to each other, how you speak to each other, how you communicate, how you treat each other, how you interact in the workplace. Get clarity around that. Just to go back a step, I mentioned earlier the program that I developed a number of years ago called Class Act Conduct.
Okay.
Its very purpose is it's an interactive online module with facilitated support, but its very purpose is to invite every worker into that conversation, to give them the opportunity to reflect on the kind of communication behaviours that they have experienced at work, in this job, in past jobs, that have made them feel unsafe.
Okay.
Verbal behaviours, non-verbal behaviours that have given them the experience of rejection and exclusion from their social pack at work.
Okay.
Reflect on that. Also reflect on the kind of behaviours that have supported them to feel that acceptance and belonging to their pack.
Okay.
And then support them to talk about it.
Gotcha.
Talk about how they talk to each other. Because bringing that clarity, giving everyone that pair of glasses to have a look at how they interact, how they speak to their colleagues, and how they're spoken to, creating that transparency creates accountability. It gives workers agency to be able to raise concerns when they are feeling unsafe in their interactions at work. And it increases their accountability to treat others well.
Okay.
Treat others as you like to be treated. It's a sacrosanct principle that everybody espouses. And so when we create, as the employer, facilitating that process, giving workers that opportunity to come and sit together, share stories of your own experience of work where you were bullied or disrespected, intimidated, rejected, excluded, and how that made you feel. Share stories about it. Invite others to share their stories. And then bring them into a conversation around, how do we want to experience this here? How do we want to be known? How do we want to speak to each other when we turn up at work. What behaviors we want to experience? What don't we want to experience?
Okay.
Once you create that transparency and get an agreement around it that everyone's had a voice in shaping, you are safe. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Firstly, because the social, relational factors, hazards are the most dominant volume of claims in Australia.
Okay.
The safe work jurisdictions report that the dominant number of claims is around 58 to 60% or plus involve workplace bullying, harassment, team conflict, interpersonal stress.
Okay.
So you're directly addressing the dominant risk profile.
Okay, gotcha.
But you are indirectly reducing your risks across them all because you are creating an environment where you know and you've explicitly told your workers that they are safe to come forward and have a chat if they've got workload stressors, if they're struggling to manage their shifts, whatever their concern is, if they're confused about their role, if there's a lack of role clarity and they want to bring that forward. You know what? They can have a chat about it. They can chat to their colleagues and say, hey, is there something we can do to improve this? They can chat to their manager or supervisor. It's the communication that unlocks the solution to all of the 17 hazards.
That makes sense. So it's the same with like just standard physical safety when it comes to OH&S, you know. No business is foolproof when it comes to workplace safety and potential hazards and risks, but one of the ways they can shield themselves from potential issues is by having regular meetings with their staff, letting people voice any concerns, being the eyes and the ears of the organization and saying, actually, there are a few hazards that need to be brought to your attention. We're treating psychosocial safety exactly the same. We're meeting with people. We're giving them opportunities to talk, especially in an environment. I think a lot of people would be listening to this and think, people are getting too soft these days. We've got an environment where we enjoy a bit of playful banter. And if they can't handle it, maybe they don't belong here. Maybe they're not right. Maybe they're not a good fit for us because that's the culture here. How do we speak to them? Yeah.
And I think, we've got to be honest. The norms of one workplace in terms of communication and behaviour will be different to another. Go on to a mine site in remote WA.
Yes.
You've got a set of, if you like, communication rules or accepted terms. There's a lot more joking. There's a lot more of taking the proverbial, a lot more banter, a lot more potentially, more swearing, whatever. And if if the norms are discussed and understood, and if people feel safe in the interaction, that's okay. And those norms will be different to the norms you'll see show up in a school workplace, for example.
Of course.
So the important piece is not to prescribe precisely what those behaviours should and should not be. Of course, we know there are some off the table, overt displays of sexual harassment and discrimination, direct insults, abusing someone, throwing a punch at someone. They're never safe. But there's a whole lot of grey area in the communication. That an employer isn't going to prescribe necessarily. But what it can do is create the conversation and the consultation environment so that workers can speak up and say, yeah, we're cool with this. That's us. And I feel acceptance and belonging in the midst of this. And I'm happy with these behaviours and I'd suggest we make these changes. Sometimes this is a bit off. We talk about it. It's when we don't talk about it that the risks flare up and that the employer and the employee for different reasons are exposed to risk.
That makes sense. So creating an environment where, we can let the natural rhythms of our interactions, still flourish, where people want to feel that they're not being monitored and, like you said, overly micromanaged within the workplace. They can still be free to be themselves. But at the same time, if someone does feel in any way that the conduct is inappropriate, that the communication within the banter starts to feel like a hindrance rather than helpful, then they have someone they can speak to openly. What do you think about things like anonymous sort of portals where people can anonymously give feedback and let people know, hey, I don't feel comfortable with X, Y, Z. What would you think about something like that?
I've seen them do a lot of harm.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought.
To be honest, a lot of harm.
Tell me, do you mind broadening that out?
Sure. So, for example, I've got a few organisational cases that come to mind when you ask that question where a manager has had a complaint made about them and the organisation's process is such that it's enshrined in silence.
Yeah, okay.
And that manager will know that a complaint has been lodged, but they are completely disallowed from speaking to anybody about it.
There you go.
And where that process, as they so often do, has travelled many months without update, without communication, leaving that manager isolated, and without any doubt that is ballooning right there, a significant psychosocial risk in and of itself.
Yep. So how would a good quality manager, a great leader within an organization have a difficult conversation without destroying trust within the organization? Someone's come to them openly about a particular issue that they might be having with the greater group or individuals within that group. How does a great manager or great leader address that without destroying trust within the group?
I think it comes back to the art of being human. Now, I feel that to do that question the justice that it deserves, I need to dig into the neuroscience a little.
I was hoping we'd head that way. Thank you. I was looking for a way in because this part is so fascinating.
So you might have to remind me of the question when I get to it. But can I just take a few minutes to unpack the social neuroscience that sits behind this work?
Yes.
And I preface that by saying, the best neuroscientists in the world will leave this planet knowing a fingernail's worth about our unknowable, phenomenal human brain and our intrinsically social brain. I am simply someone who has immersed herself over the past decade in the neuroscience literature, in the theory, to work out ways to apply it into practice every day in the workplace context.
Yep.
So this is a journey that starts in a little region of the brain at the base of the limbic system, sitting just above the brain stem, called the amygdala. A lot of people have heard of the amygdala these days. It's become a very popular, on-trend part of the brain to talk about, and that with good reason.
Yes.
So just say a team leader goes in to start a meeting, and someone who is a known social threat to her pipes up at the start of the meeting and says in a very abrupt, cold, clipped tone of voice, "I don't understand that," or "Can you repeat that this time in English?"
Okay.
Just say, and I've seen that happen.
Yeah. And me too.
Oh, yeah, a bunch. What's going to happen is that that signal, that threat signal, will be picked up by the amygdala. The amygdala's job is to process all the stimuli that hits the brain internally and externally. It's the processing center essentially for the brain, alongside the hippocampus and other adjoining regions. So, and because that's not the first, but it's the 21st time she's had a signal of threat from this particular colleague, the amygdala is going to light up because it's using that information. Now, the amygdala pays attention to all kinds of stimuli. And it's really looking to process and attach the relevant emotion to that stimuli. We have a fundamentally emotional brain. So it's sorting, is this a signal of trust? Is it excitement, joy? Is it fear, anger, disgust, sadness, shame? What is it? But of course, because this is intrinsic part of our survival center, it's most paying attention to, most oriented to signals of potential threat. It's there to keep us safe. There's a signal of threat right there. It's also learned, incidentally, that the most likely source of threat is from another human being.
Okay.
It's not first the pouncing tiger or the car that's about to hit us. The brain has learnt that the most likely source of threat is going to come from another human being.
Yes.
And of all of the stimuli that it really becomes obsessed to understand, is part of its threat detection system from a human being, is signals that come from the human face.
Yes, okay.
And vocal tones.
Gotcha.
So we have 42 muscles in the human face, and all of them are working, and our brains are hyper-scanning the movement of those muscles to identify, am I safe with this person? Am I experiencing acceptance and belonging?
Yes.
Or am I experiencing rejection and exclusion?
Yes.
Fundamental need to know information above all else. That's how important we are to each other.
Yes. That makes sense.
So, so I'm going on.
No, there's so much in that because literally the problem I'm going to have is where do I return to on this? So we're talking about threat signals within the workplace.
Correct.
First of all, it's safe to say that in the majority of workplaces, we're not worried about physical threat. We're worried about threats to our integrity, our reputations,
acceptance,
and that overall feeling of acceptance and belonging within.
Am I part of this? That's right. Am I accepted by that person? Am I rejected by that person?
Yes.
We can't discount the extent to which we are socially wired creatures.
Yes.
We are, as Dan Siegel says, part of an interconnected whole. Our brains aren't, a single system. We are an interrelated social system. Dan Siegel pioneered the field of interpersonal neurobiology.
Yeah.
So there are incredible neuroscientists around the world unpacking the might and power of the social brain and its central importance to our survival.
Yes.
So to continue my fast track and uber simplified journey through the social brain here.
Yes, please.
Let's go back to that room, that behavior, that signal that this worker's amygdala has picked up.
Yep.
Loaded that emotion of fear onto the neurons and started to distribute it through core social and emotional processing pathways. Now, you can't simplify the process that the brain will then undertake, which will be unique to that human being. But it's fair to say there are dominant systems that will be used in processing social and emotional content. One of the regions, so that information will be sent up through the neuronal networks into the midbrain.
Yep.
There's a region called the superior temporal sulcus.
Okay.
The posterior part of the STS is particularly key in its role to identify the intention of communication signals coming towards us from other people.
Yeah.
And then also identifying our own back to them. So let's take this worker. In this particular case, her superior temporal sulcus has likely confirmed that the intention of that communication signal, that interruption, that abrupt hostile question was to threaten. And it's used because the brain can only use the information that it already knows based on what it has currently exposed to and experienced.
Yes.
So it's confirmed based on pattern recognition and social information and the brain's phenomenal resources to process social signals. Confirmed threat.
Yep.
It then sends that information forward, that emotion forward into the prefrontal cortex.
Yep. Yep.
Now, for the first time, that worker's brain is conscious of that emotion and of the threat. All of that stuff that just occurred in the non-conscious region of the brain. Now it's conscious. And now she's sitting there saying, I've got to get out of here. I can't do this. I'm in over my head. The first thing that prefrontal cortex will do is attach a language to that emotion. The next thing it will do is kick into threat, escalate the threat response.
Yes.
So the processing speed, for example, of our orbitofrontal cortex will slow in receipt of threat signals. So she's now fogging up. She's now not paying attention to the meeting or what she's saying. She's more anxious. She's not listening as well. Her fundamental cognitive resources are now failing her And we've all experienced that, haven't we?
Absolutely.
That fog, that panic, that confusion. I can't think clearly. You later on think, why didn't I think to say that? But at the time you couldn't think of a thing.
Yes.
Then the brain will also then shrink the supply of glucose and oxygen in circulation in response to that threat and send its energy and resources back down the brainstorm to activate the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, which will kick in with all the physiological responses to threat. Her stomach will tighten, her heart will race.
Yep.
Her breathing will become more shallow.
Yep.
Her palms will sweat. All of these physiological symptoms of threat will kick in response to that one signal of threat because it's part of a pattern of signals that tell her she is rejected and excluded by that person.
Gotcha.
And that really does sound dramatic.
Yes.
But it is. That's how much we as human beings matter to each other.
Yes.
And how much our acceptance and belonging matters and how much the absence of it hurts.
Can I ask you?
Yes.
Are men exempt from these feelings?
No.
Is there a particular character of man that can find themselves oblivious to this? Or like, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Emotional sensitivity. Like,
true.
We talk about EQ a lot. It used to be a real big component of when we addressed candidates for employment positions. We used to think EQ is a really important aspect, but there's a sensitivity that comes with EQ.
That's true.
Right? We can feel things more than other people. You know, I can talk about my partner, Ali, for example, where when she's speaking to me, she's literally scanning my face. I can feel her reading me as in real time. Yes. And I feel sensitive to that because I don't want to say the wrong thing. I want to make sure that I am intentional about the way that I communicate because some people have an ability to read between the lines, to be able to monitor whether you're being authentic, to monitor whether your internal dialogue is actually consistent with what you're actually saying. Some people have a real ability to do that, but I think there'd be a flip side to that.
Yes,
would be they would also maybe be more prone to feelings of threat, where somebody who has less EQ,
right,
it might just roll right past them.
Sure,
they might be easier to maintain employees because they don't have any ability to actually feel that threat response. I mean, is that a lot to unpack there, or is that a simple...
It's a good thing and an important thing to unpack. So it's true. Some human beings have a sharper, more heightened social or emotional antenna than others.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
You know, I talked about the superior temporal sulcus before.
Yes, that's what got me thinking about this. Yes.
Yeah. The posterior part of the STS that has that all-important role, I'll remind you to interpret the intention of the communication signal coming towards us.
Yeah.
It's very good at its job.
Okay.
So the difference... And it knows the difference between the intention of this person when they were sarcastic, bitey, interrupted, spoke over the top of them, rolled their eyes when they spoke, or even just ignored them when they spoke and directed their attention to another colleague.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's using that patterned information of experience. So it's loading this content on all the time to make sense of whether the owner of the brain is safe or vulnerable.
Yeah.
But it also is able to discern the intention of the person who perhaps has that lower social antenna, that lower EQ.
Yeah.
Perhaps phrases their questions without finesse, a little bit more bluntly.
Yeah.
With less expression.
Yes.
But it can still know, okay, I still feel safe. The intention is not to harm.
Gotcha.
Now, I don't say, we always get this stuff right. The brain doesn't always get this stuff right for us because it might be that we've had such exposure to say, a workplace bully in the past, that we've become more heightened around our threat detection.
That could be real. Past traumas, past experiences dictate the way we interpret new information. Yeah.
And that's why the conversation's important. That's why the best we can do is talk about how we talk to each other. Then you can check in. You can say, whether it's in a relationship context or a colleague or a friend or a sister, a brother, a cousin, hey, I want to check in on something. I love you to bits. You're amazing. Think you're phenomenal in this, that, and the other way. I've got to say, every now and then there's something that throws me. I just want to ask you if that's okay. I just want to check in because I'd rather, know than guess. I value us too much to just not check.
Yeah.
Sometimes I notice if I ask a question or make a suggestion, you can be a bit dry. You're a bit blunt, and I just want to check. Are we okay?
Yes.
Is there something going on there? Have I done something? Just check in.
Yeah.
Once you've raised, and really regardless of the answer, so long as you've communicated that with care and kindness and support.
Yep. Yep.
Regardless of the answer, you've addressed the challenge because you've created that awareness between the two of you. This is something that we've spotted. And so we're likely to be more mindful in the future of that communication. And likely there's reassurance at the end of that conversation for you.
Yep.
But even if there's not, there's greater transparency and awareness that this is what you're experiencing, this is what you're sending, and a greater mindfulness that's been achieved, which is really what you need as an outcome of that conversation. It's just talking about it. As I said at the outset of this conversation, we don't talk about how we talk to each other.
Yes.
At work,
Yes.
at home,
Yep.
in our sports clubs, in our churches, in our community groups, in our social settings, in our families.
Yes.
It's such an irony. The thing we communicate least about is how we communicate. And once we put that on the table as something that, go back to the workplace context, is part of our professional practice and actually duty, we put the reins back in our hands, or in our hands, usually for the first time.
Yeah.
And there's so much relief in that. There's so much healthy power in that, agency in our lives. We're not helpless victims on the receiving end of all this stuff.
Yes.
We get the wheel of our own lives back to have these conversations when we're being subjected to a pattern of behaviours that are harming and hurting us on a daily or frequent basis.
Yeah. And when people feel a lack of safety or security in their workplace, and when we talk from the neuroscience perspective, does that limit them? Like if someone feels unsafe, everybody's got a different way of responding to threat signals, right? You'd hear about the fight, the flight, the flee, or there's another fawn responses that everyone has.
Yes.
Not everybody wants to be upfront. Some people will shrink. There'll be some people who just don't want to have those quality conversations. How do we address those people that would rather suffer in silence and then after a while just want to leave?
Yeah.
How do we make them feel safe?
Absolutely. So the first part of that question, does it limit them? Absolutely. I would contend more than any other thing.
Okay.
And remember, a lot of this social processing is occurring in the non-conscious region of our brain. Mm-hmm. So we're not often aware of the extent to which these patterns of behavioural exposure may be affecting us, or we may have been in them, exposed to them for years before we ever become aware.
Yeah.
And I'll explain that a little later, actually, because I think that's really important to address.
Yeah.
But it absolutely limits us. There's a wonderful researcher from QUT, Professor Ian Shockett, who I regard very highly, who asserts from his wealth of mental health research that the strongest predictor of our mental health and well-being is our connectedness and belonging to each other.
Okay.
The strongest predictor of our mental health and well-being.
Okay.
So it comes after the workload pressures, the lack of role clarity, the conflicts in the nature of our work, even our shift work pressures, and some of those very real physiological pressures we might be experiencing because of the experience of work we're having.
Yep.
I would contend from a wealth of research and literature all come after the primary importance of our acceptance and belonging, our connectedness and belonging to each other, because we will weather a lot of storms as human beings when we have that in place. And then the storms that come up around these other pressures we can address, we'll feel supported, we'll be able to communicate them, stay connected, shrink that feeling of isolation, and find some repair and solution there.
Yeah.
Together, through each other.
Yeah.
So, yes, absolutely profound. And the second part of that question was around, I believe, how where workers who are quieter or retreat, have less confidence, might struggle more to have these conversations. Is that right?
Yeah, and as a result, they may be suffering in silence. They may be reluctant to speak up for fear of
For sure.
being pulled from, sometimes they just will hide within the group.
Yes.
Because they don't want to be isolated from it.
Yes.
So they won't speak up, even though things are bothering them. Would that impact their ability to work? Would that affect their productivity? Would that inability to speak up and actually have a quality conversation about the things that are limiting them impact their ability to function at their best at work?
Very much. Very much. That feeling, you know how when we go through a grief or a pain or a trauma or a torment, a personal internal challenge of any kind, that feeling of loneliness, of isolation is so acute in us, isn't it? That you see everyone out there running their lives and thinking, wow, they're just out there doing their thing and I'm stuck here with this pain by myself.
Yes.
So it's a profound impact, and again, it's tied to the connectedness. So it's so important that they find that one person to talk to, and it doesn't even have to be 10, it can just be one.
Okay.
I would question if that environment in the team, was totally safe, where there was support, humour, warmth, kindness, goodwill. That in itself would be the critical enabler of that worker being able to bring their voice forward. And I would question if they can't, what's absent there. So often there is that kind of challenge that, it only takes one worker making us feel unsafe to limit our ability to speak up factor.
Yeah.
How many times in my professional life I've heard that statement, we have a fantastic team here, that everyone's terrific. There is just that one person. And it only takes that one to shrink the safety of the entire work environment. So I'd be looking at that as an employer very much, and actively, not waiting for a problem to occur, but actively building that safe, supportive communication culture and talking it to life.
Okay.
But then absolutely for that worker with that voice challenge, find that one person you can speak to. Ideally your supervisor, but if not a colleague, break that sense of isolation straight away.
Yeah.
Find someone else. And it may be that conversation is enough that they can help you take something forward.
Yeah.
Just don't suffer alone.
Yeah.
Share.
I think that's an important one. I think because in a constructive environment, if somebody is too afraid or nervous or shy, they don't want to speak to their manager directly, so they speak to a coworker. We want to create an environment as well where there's not that sense of secrecy as well, where all of a sudden people are sort of talking behind other people's backs.
Absolutely.
And creating a little toxic pocket where it's like, no, that guy's, I hate him too. He's the worst. And then it's like, I feel better now. If someone came to you as a coworker and said, hey, I've got a real issue with our manager and the way that he speaks to me or runs, the lack of clarity in the roles that are put forward, how would you as a coworker best address that?
I like to enshrine, when we support organisations, to embed their communication commitments, a communication charter that we support organisations to implement as a fundamental, foundational instrument that supports workplace participation. One of the statements I love to recommend is, when we have a problem, we talk to each other, not about each other.
Makes sense.
Go to that person, and sure, you might need support and guidance and coaching and assistance and emotional support to do it, but Go to that person if you've got a concern kindly, in a caring, in a respectful way. Take the conversation to them. You're right. One of the greatest workplace toxifiers we see is that posse formation, as I call that posse that forms, that little pocket of behind backs talk that happens.
Yeah.
And ironically, it's actually a maladapted response to seeking that very human need for acceptance and belonging.
Yes.
Where and perhaps one or two individuals, their psychology perhaps isn't healthy enough to manifest or create that participation in a way that's safe and inclusive.
Yep.
They'll be cognitively looking for it in other ways.
Yeah.
So they find it by creating that posse that, creates an enemy, someone they can talk about because they feel allegiance and an alliance there as they participate in that posse. It's satiating that need, but it's actually feeding an unhealthy psychological complex in themselves. And it's incredibly harmful for the self and the other at work. Really important for managers to watch for and address.
Well, that led me to, and I'm very conscious of your time, but there are a few more questions. I hope you're okay for
Absolutely, and I have to loop back to one that I haven't properly addressed as well.
All right. Well, so, we talk a lot about the perspective of the employee. We talk a lot about, the safety of employees. Some of the most vulnerable people within an organization are the managers themselves.
Yes.
Because they've been appointed with a level of responsibility, and a lot of people-focused managers can be very highly effective when they spend time nurturing a culture, but at the same time, they're exposed to bad behavior coming their way. That lack of respect, that lack of, communication coming from the other people where they might be forming posses and, working to sort of undermine the confidence of managers. If someone's in a leadership role today, how do they best position themselves in the current environment to shield themselves from negative behavior coming upward?
Great question. And you're so right, Chad. It's a big challenge. It's, there's one of you, there's many of them. I've often said, that CEO's chair is the most isolating, lonely chair to sit in.
I thought it was everyone's dream job. I thought they were
The pressures come with the gig, don't they? The research in this country suggests that 1 in 3 managers will experience upwards bullying.
Oh, wow.
So Sarah Branch is one researcher from Griffith University in Queensland who's done some very good research into this space, but there's additional research that really that corroborates those findings. And most researchers also contend that the figure's considered to be much higher than that.
Okay.
But it is compromised by a lack of comfort in the manager to report that that's what they're experiencing.
Yep.
Or to even self-identify that that's what's going on.
Yeah, wow.
Because it's a blind spot area for us, I think, in workplaces. And you're right. As I always say, psychological safety is for everybody in the workplace, not just the person with the loudest voice, for every single person. And we are absolutely seeing increasing psychological pressures on the middle management layer at work as well, who are managing an increasing volume of psychosocial injury complaints or concerns.
Yep.
And who are left to implement this very thorny legislation.
Yes.
And often feel that the support's not there above them. So very real challenge. And how do they reduce that? Again, it is by talking about it. So prevention is better than a cure.
Okay.
The strongest, most protective and important work you can do as an employer and as a leader is to consult on and discuss, agree your psychosocial and your psychological safety position and support, establish it in policy, and ensure that it's the first conversation and you are having with an employee as they walk in the door on day one.
Okay.
Imagine a world where you've got that communication charter that sets out the kind of communication behaviours that we support here and and the kind we don't. So you touched on before that behind backs talking.
Yes.
Our charter is very clear. We talk to each other, not about each other. If we have an issue, we don't form a posse.
Yep.
We don't talk behind backs.
Yep.
We connect and we have a conversation. It's respectful, it's supportive, it's kind. There isn't a subject matter that we can't discuss, provided we bring a manner that is kind, considerate, professional and supportive.
Yeah.
Okay, that's our principle.
That's number one.
So when we establish those agreements around communication, behaviour and interactions at work, we've established them consultatively, so our workers have had a voice in shaping and agreeing them, and we've cemented that in policy as the underpinning of our psych safety practice here.
Yeah.
We're in a very strong position to ensure that in induction it's clear
Yes.
as a requirement
Yes.
of safe workplace participation,
Yep.
in the same way that every worker has a requirement to participate and contribute to workplace health and safety in all ways at work.
Yeah.
It's the same way that they are required to ensure that they participate safely in preventing trip hazards and falls and slips.
Yep.
They're required to be active in preventing the psychological and behavioural risks.
Okay.
So when that's really clear, you can bring that conversation up at any point where you start to see those patterns forming. You can turn that into a conversation, take it back to the charter and support workers if needed, but require this as your standard of conduct and safe workplace participation. And there, in those circumstances where you yourself may be being affected, you're going to then be equipped to have that conversation and say, hey, if needed, hey, I've noticed a few times now, I've got to say, when I've made a suggestion or comment in a meeting, I've noticed a few times that you've looked at a colleague and sort of rolled your eyes or sneered a little bit.
Yeah.
I just want to check in on that. What's going on there? Is there something I can support you with? Have I done something to trouble you? If so, I'd like us to talk about it because that makes me uncomfortable and it's really difficult for me in the room. You can have that conversation.
Yeah.
Any worker, no matter what their footing or position or role in that organisation, should be able to come and have a conversation and kindly, considerately restate their need and expectations as a human being to be treated with mutual respect and professional courtesy at work.
Yeah, that's it seems so simple in theory in particular. Now, before I ask you any other questions, there was something you wanted to return to. I hope you can still recall that now.
So you asked me a while ago, before I dove into the social brain, to provide some guidance on how a supervisor might have a conversation around a psychosocial injury concern that's been raised.
Yes.
The reason I took us on that journey into the brain
Yes.
is to foreground that the most important things you will do in that conversation, which is a conversation, is not the words you will speak, but how you will speak them.
Gotcha.
To help our listeners really prioritise the non-verbal communication signals and the powerful role they're having in shaping the receiver's brain, in signalling to them safety, to bringing their wall down or putting it up.
Yep.
If you come into that room for that conversation, you're formal, you're abrupt, you're clipped, you're behind the desk.
Yeah.
You've already signalled threat in that brain because we've got a heightened charged environment where the receptors are going to be pinging.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do is ensure that those signals we're sending have one job to do, and that is to keep that receiver's wall down.
Yes.
The most powerful way you can do that is through what your face is saying.
Gotcha.
And what your voice is saying.
Gotcha.
So that might require you to do some emotional tuning of your brain before you start that conversation, to put yourself empathetically in their shoes, to think of a time where you've had really great interactions with that worker and walk that memory into the room with you, to think about someone else in your life that it might help get into that empathetic state so that you're signalling warmth and acceptance and care first. then you can have that conversation. And I would suggest that you lead with acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Acknowledge something first.
Yeah.
Acknowledge something of yourself.
Yeah.
Acknowledge something that you might have got wrong. Don't start with what they've got wrong.
That makes sense.
Acknowledge a story from your own life where you've been on the disadvantaging end of the pattern you want to discuss and bring forward.
That makes sense.
Acknowledge the discomfort that, that this is, a somewhat challenging conversation, but out of care and support for you both, it's really important that you have it.
Okay.
Acknowledge something first.
Got you.
And particularly if it's something of you, you're stepping into that circle first and then you're demonstrating and modelling that it's safe for them to enter into that circle with you.
So you're sort of trying to find some common ground straight away.
Absolutely. And show your own authenticity and openness.
That makes sense.
Then the conversation's much easier to have.
Yeah.
And then if it's around a behavioural issue, their own manner, then you can bring that forward in a climate of curiosity, not criticism.
Yeah.
I have noticed, you'll have noticed, I use those words a lot. I've noticed, I can't help but notice that a few times I've seen you reply ...
Yeah.
Or bring this manner. And it doesn't have to be a criticism. In fact, it can't be. You don't have to say you've been rude, you've been hostile.
Yes.
Just describe it. I noticed that you were a little short with me a few times. Describe that manner.
Describe the actual manner rather than the way that it felt.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Then you can say that it made me feel it really threw me. I felt a little anxious after that. But the point is to describe the manner. I tell you, I see it time and time again, whether it's a manager to a colleague, colleague to colleague, colleague to manager, whatever direction it's travelling, where there's that pattern of harmful manner, whether it's mocking, sarcasm, exclusion.
Yes.
Just the withholding of warmth in a patterned way, being cold, abrupt, curt, sharp in your answers, time and time again, excluding people from groups or social interactions.
Yes.
I can tell you that manner might have been in play for 6 to 10 years.
Gotcha.
And we often find there hasn't been one conversation about it.
Yeah.
Have one conversation about it. Share that knowledge between you. Bring that out. Ask, express concern, care, but concern about the impact it's having, curiosity to why this is happening.
Yeah.
Seek help to understand why, offer things you can do to improve, but achieve the one thing you need to in that conversation, which is describe that manner. Then you're going to make it much harder for that person to bring that manner towards you again. You will break that pattern because it's now you've taken the unspoken and you've made it spoken.
That's important.
And if it was a blind spot for them, you've also helped them reflect on something that is no doubt radiating harm to others and also to themselves.
That makes sense.
So that conversation gets to be a win for everybody, and it may not be a win the first time. You may not get the reaction that you were looking for. You may get someone dismissing you, ignoring you, palming it off. They may find a way to criticise you back. It doesn't matter how they react in that moment. It only matters that you raised it. And the measure you're looking for is a measure thereafter of reduction of that appearance of that manner, which you are likely to see after you've had that conversation kindly and well.
For those that are listening to this now going, okay, this is an area that I probably haven't given a lot of focus. And I want to really just first highlight what are the risks of inaction besides workplace productivity, which I think we've addressed. Say people who feel safe, people who feel valued and respected in a workplace will perform better. That's important. But what about those who go, yeah, look, we're doing all right. She'll be right. You know, that sort of attitude that if it works, don't fix it. Are there any risks that they need to be aware of?
There absolutely are, Chad. And the most significant risk is that you will experience an increasing escalation of psychosocial injury complaints and claims. Both of them are costly to your business.
Okay.
So complaints, of course, beggar in all kinds of costs, the costs of an investigation, of providing wellbeing or counselling support, of stress leave, sick leave associated with complaints, and of course the bleed out effect that it has on other team members who are exposed to the direct and indirect impacts of that complaint.
Okay.
There's a heap of costs, and they're hard dollar costs, and many employers will already know this.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a cost of claims once they're getting approved.
Okay.
We see so many psychosocial injury complaints that started as a small argument, for example, between two colleagues that escalated.
Yeah.
That resulted in one of them, if not both, lodging psychosocial injury complaints with HR and then taking them to to claim. And we've seen them do that where their own conduct has been quite poor in actual fact.
Yes.
But they've still been approved by the safe work jurisdiction, and they have hard costs attached for the employer.
And that's because the employer didn't take adequate steps to ensure that the workplace is deemed to be a safe environment?
Yes, there's two reasons. So I think at the moment there's a lack of clarity and specificity.
Yes.
That workers aren't adequately required to describe what they mean when they say, I don't feel safe at work,
Okay.
for example.
Yeah.
So your defense against this is to prove that you have a system of psychosocial risk prevention in place.
Okay.
So that your complaint, your claim isn't getting adjudicated just on the basis of one voice, one perception, but you've established clear evidence around requirements for safe participation, the charter, the agreements, the policies, embedded induction, consultatively developed with workers and clearly communicated to all workers. That's your benchmark. That's your baseline.
Okay.
So then you've got an opportunity to ensure that those complaints and those claims aren't just being interrogated on the basis of that one voice, but are interrogated on the basis of implementation of the legislation, which is that you have a system of risk prevention in place.
Okay.
So for that reason, we at the National Psychosocial Safety Network have spent the last several years in deep consultation and development of Australia's National Psychosocial Safety Certification.
Okay.
So the certification is being launched at the end of August, and it will finally ensure that organisations, that employers have the means to prove that they have implemented risk prevention as per legislative requirements.
Okay.
At the moment, up to now, we've had the code of practice, we've had the hazards legislation, but we haven't had given organisations the means to prove they have a prevention system in place.
Okay.
Now we do.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And where do people find this?
So by visiting psychosocialsafety.network, our website, and paying attention to the updates that are coming through that website around the launch of the national certification.
Okay.
Its intention, as per the conversation we've been having today, is to equip organisations to implement psychosocial safety and psychological safety, to ensure that workers have the agency to speak up and participate safely at work, but also the accountability for doing so for their sake and the sake of their colleagues and everyone around them. So, I said earlier, psychological safety is for everybody. Embedding that psychological safety as a requirement for safe workplace participation is a right and a responsibility that belongs to every worker, from the CEO through to the newest cadet and recruit in the business equally. So by implementing that practice of psychological safety, of kind, supportive and respectful workplace communication as everyone's opportunity and responsibility, we empower the organisation to address all of the hazards proactively and preventatively and demonstrate they've done so. So the certification system is the way to prove that you meet both your compliance objectives but also your commercial objectives.
Gotcha.
And safeguard your business from the fast and rapidly rising costs of psychosocial hazards management.
Yeah, wow. Leanne, it's been absolutely, for me, I find this to be so interesting. I think anyone listening to this would absolutely be able to pull some fantastic information from that. Getting in touch with you, is the NPSN the best way to do that through that same portal if they wanted to get in touch with you and maybe have you work with their organization?
Yes, absolutely. Psychosocialsafety.network.
Perfect. I'll put the link inside the bio, and I'm really grateful you took some time to come out here today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chad. An absolute pleasure.
Mine too.